Welcome back, students. We will continue our discussions today regarding separation of the components of a mixture. We have learned that most of the natural substances are not chemically pure, and different methods of separation are used to get individual components from a mixture. Separation makes it possible to study and use the individual components of a mixture. Most of the natural substances are not chemically pure. They are either mixed with impurities or other substances or are mixtures of some substances. In order to study the properties of individual substances, we need each component of the mixture in the pure state. That's why it becomes so important for us to figure out different methods so as to separate the individual components of the mixture. Heterogeneous mixtures can be separated into their respective constituents by simple physical methods, some of which we have already discussed in our previous session. But before we get into the actual separation techniques, let us quickly recapitulate about what are pure substances and impure substances or mixtures. A pure substance is made up of only one substance and is not mixed with any other substance. Purity of a substance can be determined by its melting and boiling points or chromatography. Now, at this point, I would like to tell you that on the basis of their chemical composition, substances can be classified either as elements or compounds. Actually, Robert Boyle was the first scientist to use the term element in 1661. Antoine Laurent Lavoisier, a French chemist, was the first to establish an experimentally useful definition of an element. He defined an element as a basic form of matter that cannot be broken down into simpler substances by chemical reactions. On the other hand, a compound is a substance composed of two or more elements chemically combined with one another in a fixed proportion. Talking about mixtures, a mixture is a substance which consists of two or more elements or compounds which are not chemically combined together. For example, milk, air, soil, glass. Mixtures are not pure as it contains many particles in it. We already know that there are two types of mixtures, homogeneous and heterogeneous, and it does not have a definite melting or boiling point. Now let us begin with one of the common separation techniques that we employ also in our household to separate the components of a heterogeneous mixture, and that technique is filtration. Filtration is used to separate heterogeneous mixtures composed of solids and liquids. It basically uses a porous barrier to separate the solid from the liquid. Now, you have already studied about traditional filters in your junior classes, but you have seen how the impurities present in water are filtered with the help of coarse sand, gravel, charcoal. This technique is actually employed to separate out the dissolved impurities in water. We also have common filters, the candle filter or the electric filters in our house, which employs a similar technique to separate out the dissolved impurities in water. So liquid passes through, leaving the solid in the filter paper. Like in the laboratory, if we are using a filter paper for separating out the components dissolved in liquid, then the residue is left on the filter paper while the clear filtrate is collected in the beaker. So filtration differs from adsorption, where it is not the physical size of particle that causes separation but the effects of surface charge. Some adsorption devices containing activated charcoal and ion exchange resin are commercially called filters, although filtration is not their principal function. So from this picture itself, it is very much clear to you all that how the technique of filtration is used in a lab. You can see a very simple setup where inside a funnel a filter paper has been used, and with the help of that filter paper a heterogeneous mixture comprising of a liquid and a solid is being separated. So obviously while passing through that filter paper, the solid particles will be stopped by the filter paper, while the liquid will pass through the porous filter paper and will be collected in the beaker kept below. So filtration can be used to separate an insoluble substance from a soluble substance. Here it is very important to know that The solid particles will be left as residue only when they don't dissolve in the liquid. For example, if you're having a mixture of sugar and water, so that cannot be separated. Sugar cannot be separated from water using the technique of filtration because it is soluble in water. The same is true for a mixture of salt and water. But if you suppose dissolve sand in water, then sand can be separated from water using this technique of filtration. The next method is sublimation. Now, in one of our previous classes, we have discussed in detail about change of state, in which we have studied that by bringing about a change in pressure and temperature, we can change the state of matter. Matter primarily exists in three states: solid, liquid, and gases. And by changing the temperature, we have seen that how a particle, a form of matter, can change its state. Like it could be present in solid state, and by increasing the temperature by the process of melting, it changes into liquid. Solid changes to liquid by melting, liquid changes to gas by vaporization, gas changes to liquid by condensation. But there are instances when a solid substance may directly change into the gaseous state on increase of temperature, and that method is known as sublimation. So sublimation is also one of a common technique that is employed for separating out mixtures that are made up of substances that sublime. So most of the solid substances when heated changes into liquid and finally into vapor. This vapor on cooling first forms liquid and finally the solids. On the other hand, there are some solid substances like ammonium chloride, camphor, iodine, naphthalene, anthracene, which directly changes into vapors on heating and the vapors gives back solid substance on cooling. The change of a solid directly into a vapor on heating and of the vapor into solids on cooling is known as sublimation. We can see the setup that is commonly employed for sublimation. Let me zoom the picture a little bit so that the setup becomes pretty much clear to you all. So we'll be discussing this method in a bit more detail. We have already learned while discussing about sublimation in a previous chapter that camphor changes directly from solid to gaseous state on heating. So suppose if you have a mixture of salt and camphor, to separate such mixtures that contain a sublimable volatile component from a non-sublimable impurity, the sublimation process is used. Now you can see the setup. Here, the aim is to separate a mixture of salt and ammonium chloride. So you can see that in the setup we are having an inverted funnel that has been placed over a china dish. The china dish has a mixture of salt and ammonium chloride, and in that inverted funnel, the mouth of which has been plugged with a cotton plug. So as soon as that mixture is started heating, the mixture of ammonium chloride and salt is taken in a china dish and covered with an inverted funnel. The loose cotton plug is put in the stem of the funnel to prevent the ammonium chloride vapors from escaping in the atmosphere. On heating, ammonium chloride changes into vapors, obviously because it is sublimable. These vapors condense on the cold inner side of the funnel to give back solid ammonium chloride. Sodium chloride does not vaporize on heating, so it remains behind in the china dish. So this method can be easily employed in such cases where we are having a mixture of one substance which sublimes and the other which does not. So this is also one important technique of separation of the component of a mixture. Centrifugation. If a question is asked to you, how can we separate cream from milk? Nowadays, we get full cream, toned and double toned varieties of milk packed in polypacks or tetra packs in the market. These varieties of milk contain different amounts of fat. So, if we are asked to separate the fat component from milk. How can we do so? Sometimes the solid particles in a liquid are very small and pass through a filter paper. So obviously the technique of filtration cannot be employed to separate out the fat components of milk. For such particles, a filtration technique cannot be used. Such mixtures are separated by centrifugation. The principle is that the denser particles are forced to the bottom and the lighter particles stay at the top when spun rapidly. So you can see right now the explanation for the technique of centrifugation that is coming on the screen. Centrifuges rotate containers of liquids to separate suspended materials with different densities. Centrifuges separate different components of human blood or milk to clarify solutions. A high speed separator can rotate at great speed to separate fat from milk. The spin dryer in washing machine is a type of centrifuge that throws out the liquid by the centrifugal force of the rotation. A picture showing a general centrifuging machine is also there on the screen, so that it becomes pretty much easy for you to understand how this technique actually works out. Now, before we get into the next technique, I would like to tell you that centrifugation finds its application in many places. It is used in diagnostic laboratories for blood and urine test. It is used in dairies and home to separate butter from cream. And obviously, it is used in washing machines to squeeze out water from wet clothes. Now, let us get into two very common techniques. Sieving is one such technique that is used every single day in our household. You might have seen that we use a sieve for removing the roughage part of flour, or sometimes we use a strainer. Strainer is also a form of sieve that is commonly used in the morning for straining out tea leaves from tea. So what is sieving? A porous material is used to separate particles of different sizes. You might have seen in construction sites that how bigger granular particles of sand are separated out and fine sand is used for preparing the mixture that is ultimately used in the construction purposes. So in that they use a porous material that is made up of a fine net. That is actually the method of sieving. This method is most commonly used to effect gross separations as of liquids from suspended crystals or other solids. To accelerate filtration, a series of sieves is stacked with the screen of largest hole size at the top. Another common technique is using a magnet that can be used to separate out the magnetic materials present in a mixture. So it can be used to separate a magnetic substance from a non-magnetic substance. Magnets are used in the recycling industry to separate ferrous and non-ferrous metals. Sedimentation and decantation. The particles suspended in the liquid heavier than this one are more attracted by gravity and therefore in a certain period of time precipitate on the bottom of the container. You might have observed that when water is collected in a bucket, after some time, if suppose that bucket has been left undisturbed, you observe some mud particles settle down at the bottom of the bucket. This is nothing but sedimentation. Actually, the particles that were initially dissolved in water, suspended in water, due to the fact that they are heavier and by the action of gravity, they settle down after a certain duration of time. Now, once the suspended particles have settled down, how to separate out the liquid? This method is nothing but decantation. Decanting is done to separate particulates from a liquid by allowing the solids to settle to the bottom of the mixture, that is sedimentation, and pouring off the particle-free part of the liquid. Another method is to allow two immiscible liquids to separate and the lighter liquid is poured off. So decantation is commonly employed when we find that the suspended particles have settled down in the bottom. Thereafter, we can separate out by we can Gradually pour out the liquid into a separate container and the dissolved particles will remain in the bottom. Sedimentation and decantation techniques are commonly employed together for separating out the dissolved particles in a mixture. Chromatography. Chromatography is a very important technique when it comes to separating out the components of color. Chromatography is a term used to describe a separation technique in which a mobile phase carrying a mixture is caused to move in contact with the selectively absorbent stationary phase. There are a number of different kinds of chromatography which differ in the mobile and the stationary phase used. Now I would like to just zoom in a little bit so that it becomes pretty much clear to you. Chromatography is derived from a Greek word chroma, which means color. Chromatography is a laboratory technique used for the separation of mixture. Now the mixture is dissolved in a fluid called the mobile phase, which carries it through a structure holding another material called the stationary phase. The various constituents of the mixture travel at different speeds, causing them to separate. The separation is based on differential partitioning between the mobile and stationary phases. Subtle differences in a compound's partition coefficient result in differential retention on the stationary phase and thus changing the separation. Chromatography may be preparative or analytical. The purpose of preparative chromatography is to separate the components of a mixture for more advanced use and is thus a form of purification. Analytical chromatography is done normally with smaller amounts of material and is for measuring the relative proportion of analytes in the mixture. Now, as you can see, I have shown paper chromatography, in which the stationary phase is paper and mobile phase is a liquid, commonly water, but could be ethanol or a non-polar solvent. Now in the screen you can see several such techniques through which chromatography is being used. If a question is asked, is the dye in black ink a single color? Then obviously the answer should be no, because there are several colors present in that black ink. The process is very simple. You can take a thin strip of filter paper or any coarse paper. Draw a thin line on it using a pencil approximately 3 cm above the lower edge. Put a small drop of ink that is water soluble from a sketch pen or fountain pen at the center of the line. Let it dry. Lower the filter paper into a jar or glass or test tube containing water so that the drop of ink on the paper is just above the water level, and leave it undisturbed. Keep an eye as the water rises upon the filter paper. You will find that gradually there are several spots, as you can see in this picture. How the different colors present in that ink has got separated out. You begun from the origin and gradually how different colored spots have been formed. So the ink that we use has water as the solvent and the dye is soluble in it. As the water rises on the filter paper, it takes along with it the dye particles. Usually a dye is a mixture of two or more colors. The colored component that is more soluble in water rises faster, and in this way the colors get separated. With the advancement in technology, newer techniques of chromatography have been developed. Distillation. How can we separate a mixture of two miscible liquids? In a previous class, we had discussed that when a mixture of two immiscible liquids are there, we can make use of a separating funnel. But suppose the two liquids mix with each other, then how to separate that mixture? Then the process employed is called distillation. Distillation is the process of heating a liquid to form vapor and then cooling the vapor to get back the liquid. The liquid obtained by condensing the vapors is called distillate. The process in which the components of a substance or liquid mixture are separated by heating it to a certain temperature and condensing the resulting vapors. You can see the setup that is commonly employed, and it comprises of a condenser. The mixture is first of all heated, and obviously due to the difference in the boiling point of the liquid, one will vaporize faster than the other, which is later on condensed and collected separately. Let us discuss one activity for separation of mixture by distillation. To separate alcohol and water from that solution, we can take the solution in a distillational flask fitted with the fractionating column, fit with the thermometer. We can use the setup as you can see in the picture. Once the mixture is heated slowly and keeping a close watch at the thermometer reading, we find that the alcohol evaporates, condenses in the condenser, and can be collected from the condenser outlet. Water is left behind in the distillation flux. By this method, we can very easily separate out a mixture of alcohol and water. This method is used for the separation of components of a mixture containing two miscible liquids that boil without decomposition and have sufficient difference in their boiling points. To separate a mixture of two or more miscible liquids for which the difference in boiling point is less than 25 Kelvin, fractional distillation process is used. For example, for the separation of different gases from air, different fractions from petroleum products. The apparatus is similar to that for simple distillation, except that a fractionating column is fitted in between the distillation flask and the condenser. Now I will just zoom in this picture again so that the apparatus is properly visible to you all. A simple fractionating column is a tube packed with glass beads. The beads provide surface for the vapors to cool and condense repeatedly. Now let us discuss a technique that is commonly employed to separate out a mixture as one of the examples to understand this method better. Take a mixture of two liquids, chloroform and benzene, of which chloroform is more volatile than benzene. When such a liquid mixture is heated, the temperature rises slowly and the mixture starts boiling. The vapors formed mainly consist of more volatile liquid, that is chloroform, with little of the less volatile liquid, that is benzene. As these vapors travel up in fractionating column, the vapors of the less volatile liquid condense more readily than those of the more volatile liquid. Therefore, the vapors rising above become richer in chloroform and the liquid flowing down becomes richer in benzene. This process of distillation is repeated in every point of fractionating column. As a result of series of successive distillation, by the time vapors reach the top of the column and escape into the condenser, they consist entirely of the more volatile component. It is collected in a flux. When the more volatile component has completely distilled over, the temperature will again start rising, and when the boiling point of the less volatile is reached, benzene starts distilling, which is collected in another flux. In this way, separation of two miscible liquids whose boiling points differ by less than 25 Kelvin can be achieved. So as I was telling you that this method is commonly employed in separating out the components of air. Air, as we all know, is a homogeneous mixture and can be separated into its components by fractional distillation. So you can see the steps that are commonly employed for separating out the components of air. So different steps are there. You can see in step 1, elimination of dust by filtration and electrostatic precipitation. Once we obtain dust free air, in step 2, carbon dioxide is removed. Pass dust free air through KOH or NOH, which absorbs carbon dioxide. In the next step, air free from carbon dioxide and dust. So step 3, removal of water vapor through condensation or with the help of a dehydrating agent, that is concentrated sulfuric acid. Dustless, dry and carbon dioxide free air. In step 4, we employ the method of compression at approximately 200 atmospheres, cooling and expansion of air. When we get liquid air, That's when we employ fractional distillation and we obtain nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius, oxygen at minus 183 degrees Celsius, and noble gases. So, in this way, the different components present in air can be separated out. It's a bit complicated process, and the setup that is commonly employed is as coming in the screen. Using this setup, we commonly separate out the different components of air. Now that we have got an understanding of the different separation techniques, we can also understand how a water treatment plant works. Water that is available or made available to our houses consists of many impurities. Obviously, before sending it to our household, it is very important to separate out the dissolved impurities and make it fit for drinking, what is commonly referred to as potable water. So some of the separation techniques that we have studied up till now is employed to separate out the dissolved impurities in water, and that's when water becomes fit for drinking. So the common techniques that are employed, you can see in the picture, from wells or lakes or rivers to the plant, the water is sent, and coagulation, that is special compounds remove the dirt particles from the water. Then it is sent to a tank where sedimentation technique is employed. The dirt settles to the bottom and the water becomes cleaner. Now here one more method is employed that is commonly referred to as loading, where substances are mixed with water, primarily alum is mixed with water, that makes the dissolved particles a bit heavier so that it quickly settles down in the bottom. Next, we can see the method of filtration. Water passes through filters to purify it further, and last but not the least, disinfection, where the method of chlorination is commonly employed to kill the germs, that is to sterilize the water, which finally makes it fit for drinking. This is one such water treatment plant where several techniques are being employed to make the water fit for drinking. Another such example where different separation techniques are employed to separate out the components is a sewage treatment plant. We all know that it is a big problem when it comes to disposal of sewage. In metropolitan cities, when a huge amount of sewage is created almost every single day, so the disposal of sewage is a very big problem. So it becomes very important to ensure that before the sewage is being disposed, it is made free from any such impurities that is going to contaminate the soil or the water bodies where it is going to be finally dumped. So several separation techniques are employed so as to ensure that the sewage is free from harmful chemicals and such impurities that is going to contaminate water. So one such sewage treatment plant is shown in the picture. Let me show you one more. These are a couple of examples I wanted to show so that you can understand that all the separation techniques about which we have studied up till now can be combined, can be used together in several places, so that the different dissolved impurities, the different components can be separated out, and ultimately individually sometimes the components can be put to use, or sometimes if the components are necessarily contaminating something, then they can be separated out. So these were some of the common separation techniques that we need to study in our syllabus. You should go through the text all over again so that you can have a better understanding of all the separation techniques, and so that you can also be able to know as and when which technique has to be used. At this point, I would also like to mention one more thing, that you should understand the basic principle that is commonly employed for different separation techniques.